So I'll be reading to you the last chapter of Bell Hooks' Where We Stand, Class Matters. Bell Hooks is one of my favorite authors. She's a fellow Kentuckian, and I like many of her books, and I like this book in particular because it really ties down a lot of the things that she talks about throughout many of her other books. I personally like this book also because this is the last book that my grandmother and I read together and were able to discuss. And so, funny enough, my whole family actually discussed this book together and passed it around. So compliments to Bell Hooks. Nothing better than people reading your work and talking about it. So here goes, chapter 14. And I do hope that this chapter, it's a very short and brief one, but I hope it will inspire you to go out and buy the book and talk about it, with your friends. Or maybe you'll gift it to someone if you don't feel like reading it for yourself. Living without class hierarchy. Most American citizens do not acknowledge the reality of class difference, of class exploitation, and they continue to believe that this is a classless society. What they mean by this is not that citizens do not occupy different class positions, but that these class positions are not fixed. Despite grave injustice and all the barriers that make it practically impossible to change your class position, if you were born on the bottom of this society's economic totem pole, it is still true that a teeny fraction of that population squeezes and militantly forces their way from the bottom up. And we consider ourselves fortunate, lucky, blessed. And notice that she says, we consider ourselves. Yet from the onset of this book and throughout its pages, I have endeavored to frankly share the human costs of class mobility, to identify both the pleasure and the pain of those who come from the bottom closer to the top can feel. While the amount of money I have made in the last 10 years identifies me as upper class, I do not identify with this class positionality, even though I often enjoy the class power it affords me. I identify with democratic socialism, with the vision of participatory economics within capitalism that aims to challenge and change class hierarchy. I like that the money I make, which places me in an economic upper class, can be used in the service of redistribution of wealth, can be used to enhance the economic well-being of others through vigilant practices of giving and sharing. I have written many books about injustice, about ending race, gender, and class exploitation, but this is the only book I have written that focuses directly on the issue of class. More than any other book I have written, writing it aroused in me intensities of pain that often left me doubled over my writing table, hurting to my heart weeping. For no matter the class privilege I hold today, for most of my life I have lived as one with the poor and working classes. The class connection and unity I felt in my family of origin and with other poor and struggling folks as I made my way through graduate school and up the economic ladder affords me a constant awareness of class pain, of class yearning, and of the deep grief that is caused by a pervasive sense of class failure many poor and working class people feel because they do not manage to earn enough, to earn more, to effectively change their economic lives so that they can now know well-being. At times when I have spoken publicly about a family member living in poverty, living for a time without electricity or phone, without enough, audience members stand to attack my privilege. Never do I explain to them that one person with one income giving aid is never enough, that the dilemmas of poor and working class folks are caused by more than just economics, that class is more than money. I can give money, but rarely is money enough. I cannot give instant psychological makeovers. The imprints of a consumer capitalist socialization that teaches us all to spend much and value little, to get as much as we can and give as little as possible, it's known as scamming, cannot be erased at will. It should be evident that we cannot change class oppression and exploitation without changing the way everyone thinks about getting and giving. Class is much more than money. Until we understand this fact, the notion that problems in all our lives, but most especially the lives of the indigent and the poor, can be solved by money, will continue to serve the interest of a predatory ruling class while rendering the rest of us powerless to create meaningful changes in our lives across class. In these essays, I have hoped to share that the pain of being without enough money to survive adequately or well, that the widening gap between the rich and poor causes pain far beyond economic suffering, that it rends and breaks us psychologically, tearing us asunder, denying us the well-being that comes from recognizing our need for community and interdependency. Given the huge gap between those who have a lot, those who have a little, and those who have nothing, it is difficult to understand how citizens of this nation can imagine that ours is still a classless society. And here I would add that I grew up in Western Louisville, and I know that it's not a classless society. And no, I continue. However misguided the vision of a classless society is, often embedded inside this notion, is the positive understanding that wealth can be shared, that class hierarchy predicated on the assumption that those who have the most materially should rule over the rest need not exist. Sadly, the grave injustices created by contemporary transitional white supremacist capitalist patriarchy, this ever-widening gap between the rich and the poor, has been the catalyst compelling folks who are economically privileged to consider their class, to think about what they do with money. Many individuals who have economic privilege do not want to use money or reproduce material excess in ways that require the oppression, exploitation, and dehumanization of their fellow citizens. While few of these individuals are rich, it is difficult to create and reproduce wealth without exploiting others. A vast majority have class privilege that provides them, us, I include myself in this category, with any resources to share. Those among us who are progressive, who are democratic socialists, who know that wealth can be redistributed in ways that challenge and change class exploitation and oppression. As individuals, we promote and perpetuate this process of redistribution by both unorganized and organized sharing and giving of resources. In the book Robin Hood Was Right, A Guide to Giving Your Money for Social Change, authors Joan Garner, Chuck Collins, and Pam Rogers state in their preface, quote, "Tipping the balance of resources to include more of humanity is an adventurous, thrilling, and worthwhile pursuit. Charity is good, but supporting and creating social change are about power. Power can infuse lives with purpose and dignity that opens up the possibility of joy. This life of the giver, as well as that of the receiver, is transformed. The life of the giver, and as well as that of the receiver, is transformed," end quote. Folks who are not rich give a greater portion of their resources to those who stand in need than those who have great wealth, who may also give, but in ways that reinforce their ruling class power. Their giving is not aimed at redistributing wealth or eliminating class hierarchy. And I'll end here. It's not the end of the chapter, but we're almost to the YouTube 10-minute limit, and I know for a lot of people that's the limit of their attention span. But I remember my senior year in high school, even as I'd been accepted and had planned to attend a private majority white school, I was raising money for a scholarship fund that went to students going to historically black colleges. And so we would stand with buckets, dollars for scholars. We would stand with buckets all over the city of Louisville, and at major intersections. And we noticed that in so-called poor and lower income communities, we racked up more. Like, people were willing to just give that $1 or $2 out of their pocket in the poor neighborhoods than in the wealthy neighborhoods. And that's just one observation that just kind of corroborates one thing that she said there. And these are kind of conversations that that we have in our family, and I hope that you and your family talk about life and the things around you.